If you were an ordinary traveler in the Middle Ages, your night didn't end in a castle. It ended in a roadside inn. And sleeping there meant sharing a dark, crowded room with strangers whose lives were soaked in death, superstition, disease, and secrets. People we would cross the street to avoid today. Imagine this. You arrive after sunset. Your horse is exhausted. The road behind you disappears into the forest. The innkeeper gives you a place to sleep, not a private room, not a soft bed, just a space on a straw mattress. Beside people you have never met, the fire burns low. The room smells of sweat, wet leather, cheap ale, and something else. Something sour, something sick, because in medieval Europe, the people sleeping beside you were not merchants and travelers alone. They were figures from a darker world, a hidden medieval universe, a world filled with men who dealt with bodies, blood, punishment, and forbidden knowledge. And tonight, you are sleeping beside them. The first figure you might notice sits quietly near the wall. He wears a long black coat. His face is hidden behind a strange mask with a long curved beak. At first glance, he looks like a creature from a nightmare. This is the plague doctor. His mask is stuffed with herbs, flowers, and spices. Medieval medicine believed these scents could block the invisible poison in the air. The truth was far worse. When plague struck a town, everyone ran. But the plague doctor walked straight into the streets filled with dying people. His job was simple: count the dead, record the infected, and sometimes cut open the swollen black buboes that grew on their bodies. To sleep near him was terrifying, not because of the mask, but because if a plague doctor was traveling the roads, it meant death was following close behind. Across the room sits another man people pretend not to see. His hands are thick and scarred. His clothes smell faintly of iron. He drinks alone. This man is the executioner. In medieval towns, the executioner was both necessary and hated. He was the one who carried out the punishments ordered by the court: beheadings, hangings, burnings. He knew exactly how much force it took to break a neck, and how long a man could scream before his voice vanished. Most people avoided touching him. Some believed his hands carried a curse, but when night fell on the road, even an executioner needed a place to sleep. So sometimes, he slept right beside you. And then there were the women people whispered about. Near the far side of the room sits a quiet traveler wrapped in a dark cloak. She keeps her hood low. People glance at her, then quickly look away. In the medieval mind, a woman alone on the road was already suspicious. But if she carried herbs, strange roots, or small glass bottles, the whispers began immediately. Witch. In villages across Europe, thousands of women were accused of dark magic. Some were healers, some were midwives, some were simply unlucky. But fear spreads faster than truth. So when travelers saw such a woman in an inn, they wondered whether she cured sickness or caused it. Not far from her sits a man whose work was far less mysterious and far more unpleasant. His nails are permanently black. Dirt clings deep inside the cracks of his skin. He smells faintly of wet soil. This is the grave digger. Every town needed one. Someone had to dig the holes. During plague years, he worked from sunrise to midnight, carving graves faster than the church bells could ring. Some nights he buried 10 people, some nights 50. By the time he finished, the smell of the graveyard clung to him like smoke. And if you shared a straw mattress beside him, you might wonder how many bodies he touched that day. Closer to the fire sits another figure whose profession was both respected and feared: the medieval surgeon. Unlike modern doctors, surgeons were not scholars. Many were closer to butchers. Their tools included knives, saws, hooks, and heated irons used to stop bleeding. There was no anesthesia, no antibiotics. If a limb was infected, the solution was simple: cut it off, fast. The surgeon in an inn might be traveling between towns, offering his services where war, disease, or accidents left people broken. And his leather bag of instruments sometimes still carried the smell of blood. Finally, near the dim candlelight, sits a man dressed in the robes of a monk. At first, he seems peaceful, safe. Monks were supposed to represent holiness and learning, but not all knowledge was welcomed by the medieval church. Some monks copied sacred texts. Others secretly collected forbidden manuscripts, books about alchemy, ancient pagan rituals, lost medical experiments, knowledge that could heal or damn a soul. The monk in the corner reads silently, turning pages by candlelight. And you can't help wondering what language fills those pages: Latin, Greek, or something far older. The fire crackles. The inn grows quieter, but the room is still full, because the road never sleeps in the Middle Ages, and the people who arrive after midnight are often far darker than the ones already inside. The door of the inn bursts open. Cold night air rushes into the room, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant horses. Everyone looks up for a moment, then they quickly return to their drinks, or pretend not to notice, because travelers arriving this late rarely bring good news. The new figure who steps inside is tall, wrapped in a thick cloak stained by rain and road dust. He moves slowly, as if every step carries weight. Not physical weight, but something heavier: stories. This man is a messenger. In the medieval world, messengers carried letters between cities, castles, and battlefields. News traveled only as fast as a horse could run. And sometimes the news was terrible: a king dead, a war beginning, a plague spreading from town to town. Messengers rode through forests filled with bandits and wolves, crossing lands where entire villages had vanished. Many of them arrived at inns, half-starved and exhausted, their boots covered in the mud of 100 miles. And when they finally slept, they slept like men who had seen too much. Not far from him sits someone whose profession was older than kings themselves: a merchant. At first glance, he seems harmless enough. A heavy pouch hangs from his belt. Inside are coins from different towns, maybe even different kingdoms. But merchants in the Middle Ages lived dangerously. They traveled with goods people desperately wanted: salt, spices, cloth, metal tools. And wherever money traveled, so did thieves. Some merchants hired guards. Others carried knives hidden in their sleeves. because a road that looked peaceful in daylight could turn deadly after dark. And if a merchant slept too deeply inside a crowded inn, he might wake up with an empty purse, or not wake up at all. Across the room, near the stairs, another traveler sits sharpening a blade. The sound of metal against stone is slow, patient, deliberate. This man is a mercenary, not a knight, not a noble warrior, just a soldier who sells his sword to whoever pays enough. Mercenaries fought in wars that had nothing to do with honor. If one king paid more than another, loyalties could change overnight. They were experts in violence, men who had seen battlefields where the ground turned black with blood. Their armor was dented, their scars told stories they rarely shared, and when they entered an inn after weeks on campaign, the room usually grew quieter, because everyone understood something simple. A man who survives war knows exactly how to kill. And sometimes, he doesn't stop knowing when the war ends. In the corner, a quieter figure sits with his hands wrapped tightly around a wooden mug. His face is pale. His clothes are worn, but once belonged to a better life. This man is a fallen priest. In medieval society, priests held power. They spoke for God. They controlled confession, forgiveness, and fear of eternal punishment. But not every priest stayed within the rules of the church. Some questioned doctrine. Some were accused of corruption. Others simply lost faith. And when a priest lost his position, he lost everything: his home, his protection, his place in society. A wandering priest in an inn might carry guilt heavier than any traveler on the road, because in the Middle Ages, losing faith wasn't just personal. It was dangerous. Nearby, curled against the wall, sits someone many travelers tried to ignore: a leper. Leprosy terrified medieval communities. The disease slowly damaged the skin, nerves, and face. Because people believed it spread easily, lepers were often forced to live outside town walls. They carried bells to warn others of their presence. Imagine hearing that bell in the darkness of the road. A soft metal ringing that meant one thing: stay away. But inns on lonely roads sometimes had no choice but to accept anyone who could pay for a corner of the floor. So occasionally, a leper slept among the travelers. And people lay awake all night, wondering whether sickness was creeping closer in the darkness. The fire burns lower now. The room is quieter. Most travelers have stretched out on their straw mattresses. But sleep in a medieval inn is never peaceful, because the dangers of the road didn't always stay outside. Sometimes they walked straight through the door. And just when you think the room cannot possibly hold stranger people, the final arrivals begin to appear. Men who worked in shadows, people the church feared, people the law hunted, people who carried secrets that could destroy lives. And once they enter the inn, the night becomes far more dangerous than the road outside. The fire in the hearth is almost gone now. Only a few glowing embers remain, casting weak red light across the wooden floor of the inn. Most travelers have finally fallen asleep. The merchant still grips his coin pouch. The mercenary sleeps with one hand resting on his sword. The messenger lies motionless, too exhausted to dream. In the corner, the fallen priest whispers a prayer no one else can hear. And against the wall, the leper sits silently in the darkness. Outside, the wind howls across the empty road. In the Middle Ages, people feared the forest. They feared bandits. They feared wolves. But the truth was often far more unsettling, because the most dangerous place on the road was sometimes the inn itself, a room full of strangers, each carrying their own secrets, their own crimes, their own desperation. Think about it. In this single room, you might have a man who digs graves for plague victims, a soldier who has killed dozens in battle, a merchant carrying enough coins to tempt any thief, a priest who has lost his faith, and a traveler whose disease terrifies entire villages. None of them truly know each other. None of them trust each other. Yet for one long night, they must sleep under the same roof, because the road outside is dark, cold, and filled with dangers no traveler wants to face alone. So they stay. They drink. They pretend everything is normal. But every creak of the wooden floor, every shadow near the door, every unfamiliar sound in the darkness could mean trouble. A thief moving quietly between beds, a knife drawn in desperation, a sickness spreading through the room, or a stranger who should never have been allowed inside. By morning, most travelers will leave. They will mount their horses. They will disappear down the muddy roads toward the next town, and the inn will return to silence. But sometimes, one traveler never wakes up, and no one asks too many questions, because in the Middle Ages, everyone understood one thing. When you sleep among strangers on the road, you might not wake up at all.